Hello, and welcome to episode 16, all about Farewell to Lorien, chapter 8, book 2 of Fellowship of the Ring, being the 16th part of That's What I'm Tolkien About. Hello, my name is Mary Clay. If that's too complicated for you, just call me MC. And today I am joined by Valerie Winters of Hello from Elsewhere. Welcome, Valerie.
Hello, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. I don't remember if it was while we were recording or after we were recording, but when I did my episode most recently with Casey, he was like, Valerie would love to come on at some point. And
Absolutely. I was like, tell Mary Clay that I want to talk about Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I messaged him, I think like last week or a week ago, I don't know, and was like, so do you think she'd still be interested? And he's like, oh yeah, totally. I know you have 3 kids, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I was like, I don't know how insane their lives are if they're able to
this is like a night
on
off.
this podcast.
I'm like,
awesome.
Casey's in charge of the kids, and I'm going to go talk about Lord of the Rings. So
nice.
That's how I like to party.
So this chapter 8, Farewell to Lorien. I don't know. Well, let's jump right in. What are your feelings on the elves?
I'm glad you brought this up because I feel like the last couple episodes that you've posted have been a little bit anti-elf, and I love the elves.
Thank you. I love them too.
I am such a big fan of the elves. I'm like, okay, my goal for the episode is to make everybody love the elves because they are amazing.
They're great. I love them so much. Yeah. It's been very, the past couple episodes have been very elf heavy, elf discourse, history heavy because of the fact that they've been in Lothlorien for so long, but it's been it's been 3 chapters.
The 3rd chapter?
Yeah. So they've been here for 3 chapters, and I'm just like, yeah, I love this because I've been wanting to learn more about Legolas because Legolas was one of the only characters that I remembered from the movie. I was like, I know there's Frodo, I know there's Gandalf, I know there's Bilbo, and I know there's Orlando Bloom who plays an elf. And tell me about that
because
character.
He was the one that everybody had like a heartthrob, he was like, oh, Orlando Bloom.
Yeah, because
he was like his big new role.
I was gonna say, let me check this because he just coming off of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, or
I believe this was pre-Pirates.
Because I can 100%. Okay, so Fellowship of the Ring was in 2001, and Pirates of the Caribbean was in 2003. Yeah, so this was pre-Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl. So, well, that kind of amazes me because I feel like his heartthrob factor would have gone up immensely if he had done Pirates before Fellowship because he's
I don't think the blonde wig does him any favors.
That's true. Well, I was gonna say when I was younger and like my older brother would be watching it like on the TV and I would like walk in and see it on the TV, I definitely thought Legolas was a girl character. So
oh right, yeah,
because of his long flowing blonde beautiful hair. It's beautiful hair. I mean, we should all strive to. He could honestly be like in a Pantene commercial or something.
Shampoo.
Yeah.
He's like the L'Oreal. Fabio of the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Yes. Known for his hair.
Yeah, Bilbo's technically writing a book, so maybe Legolas will be like on the cover of the book.
Yes.
As the Fabio model.
He's the ad for all elves. To be fair, they all look like that. Perfect. I think this is why we love to hate the elves, is because they're portrayed as the very best of us. Mm-hmm. Like, they are everything that we aspire to be. They're wise, they're fair, they're gorgeous, they live in the most beautiful places, they lead these, like, perfect lives that we will never have. And so we just find them unbearable to us because we will never be the elves, even though we really wish we could be.
I think I made a comparison like super, super early on, and now I'm making it again. It's almost like he's the Regina George, where his life is so great and he's so beautiful and popular and cool, but we have to like him. Everyone has to like him, but secretly they're like, I hate him because they want to be him, but they can't.
Right? Or it reminds me of, I don't know, do you watch The Good Place?
I do, yes.
Okay, when Eleanor Shellstrop is always like, you're not better than me. Why do you think you're better than me? And she's like so defensive all the time. Anytime she feels like somebody is, better than her, clearly. I feel like that's us with the elves. We're like, why do you think you're better than us? You're not better than us. Even though they clearly are.
Yeah, I thought for a second you were gonna say he was like Tahani, and I was gonna.
Oh, he totally
be like,
is.
yeah, that makes sense. Or like the elves in general, I guess. But I mean, that's kind of grouping them all together into one thing, because they're definitely not like that at all. They're very, especially in this chapter, we see they're very humble, giving people, which is very nice. So with that being said, I'm glad you like the elves, because I like them too. I understand the history is there and it's problematic. Just like, honestly, all history is problematic. So, the elves are no exception. So yeah, I love the elves. It's just because of how beautifully Tolkien writes about the elves. And he always uses such descriptive language, and the language is always having to do with the clouds and the sky and the stars and the moon, and it's just so pretty. And I'm like, I want someone to like write about me like that sounds beautiful and amazing.
I know, it's always, I feel like his most beautiful descriptions are definitely about the elves and where they live.
Yeah, he definitely
I don't know whether
likes them the most, I think.
Oh yes, he puts them up there, like the level of gods or somebody. They're the ones that we look up to. But I don't know whether it's just that the elves pick the most beautiful places to live, or whether they beautify anywhere that they live so that they're up to their standard, but they to live in the most amazing places.
I think it must be, or at least Lorien in particular, it must be like elf magic, just generic elf magic, because in the previous chapter Sam comments that he hasn't necessarily seen anything magical, but he can just feel it, like it's always there and around him. So it's so beautiful, and much like the Fellowship, I'm so sad that we have to leave Lorien and go to,
I know.
It's always like the last day of vacation is always the most beautiful day, and you're like, meanwhile, packing up the car, and you're like, this sucks. I don't want to drive for 8 hours, and then I have to go back to work on Monday. This is going to suck so much. I just want to stay here and get gorgeously tan. And in my case, gorgeously tan, I mean horrendously burnt.
It's okay. I share the same affliction. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the elf magic, because you mentioned that. Mm-hmm. I was looking through Tolkien's letters, and he mentions this he says that the elves, he says, their magic is art, delivered from many of its human limitations, more effortless, more quick, more complete, product and vision in unflawed correspondence. And its object is art, not power, subcreation, not domination, and tyrannous reforming of creation. Tyrannous? I'm not sure how you say that word. But anyways, I liked the idea that their magic is art, like their ability to make everything better beyond human ability.
Yeah, that's dope, Tolkien.
I know, right?
That's just such a great way to think of it. It reminds me of, it just sounds very Ravenclaw of the elves, because that's kind of one of the traits of the Ravenclaw house is they use magic as a form of creativity and a form of discovery and creation. Right. As opposed to it being power. So, and it's funny because I've sorted all of this is like my dumb, bold claim where I'm saying, okay, the hobbits are Hufflepuffs, the elves are Ravenclaw, the wizards are probably Slytherin, and then I guess the men are Gryffindors. And then my one exception to that is that Bilbo is a Slytherin, and I'm sticking to that.
Ooh, interesting. I feel like he could almost be Gryffindor, Slytherin, like maybe he started out as more of a Gryffindor, like in The Hobbit, and then with the influence of the ring and his love to play tricks and things, I feel like he maybe becomes a little more Slytherin.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Yeah.
But I think you could definitely argue Slytherin for him.
Yeah, with such a dramatic exit like he pulled at his own birthday party, only a Slytherin would do that, so.
It's all about me. But Gryffindors are a little bit like that, too.
I know, right? It's not even about like, oh, it's all about me. It's, I'm gonna leave an impression and who cares what they think. So.
Give all the poor hobbits heart attacks. They're not used to things like that.
So, farewell to Lorien. So the previous chapter ended with Sam and Frodo looking at the mirror of Galadriel and seeing some not so fun things. And Galadriel makes the reveal that she is wearing one of the 3 elvish rings, which when I was first reading it, my dumb brain was like, oh, it's a wedding ring because she's married to Celeborn and she can't be, it's showing that she can't be with Aragorn. And that's the problem here. And then I was like, oh no, I'm dumb. I'm so dumb. It's one of the most powerful rings in all of the land. And I was like, do the elves even have? Honestly, I've thought way too much about the elves in the last couple, while reading these last couple chapters. And I was like, do the elves even have, not a monarchy. Do the elves even have like monogamous relationships? Do they get married?
They definitely seem to, I don't know if they marry, but they definitely seem to stick together forever. Like, I don't know, you hear about couples together, like Celeborn and Galadriel have been together for centuries, so it's, you kind of assume they're at least monogamous, mate for life type of thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they have traditional marriages. I'm not sure.
So I was just dumb and I was like, oh, it's not a wedding ring at all. It's a really powerful ring. So because of this revelation, and Galadriel says, no, I'm not taking your ring, Frodo. You must do this. They're like, okay, it's time to leave Lorien. And that's where chapter 8 picks up. And the gang all gathers. I know it's called the Fellowship, but I'm just always referring to them as the gang.
That works.
They all gather once again in Celeborn and Galadriel's. I know it's probably like an official royal room, but in my head it's just a tree house. And it's just a really nice tree house.
Pretty simple. They seem pretty modest.
Yeah.
Okay, this is one of the things that I like about the elves. So Galadriel and Celeborn, they were offered the position of king and queen of Lothlorien, and they were like, no, we'll just be guardians of the land, stewards. Like, they chose not to take the titles. They didn't really want to rule over everyone and everything and have that like distance between the two, so they chose to be lord and lady instead. So when you're talking about humility of elves, that's pretty rad.
I 100% thought that they were like the king and queen of Lorien. So I suppose not.
Well, and I think they probably kind of are to all effects, like they rule the land.
They're pretty much like king and queen, basically. Man,
yeah.
What the heck?
But they chose not to take the titles.
So then where are the king and queen? You don't have to answer if it's going to give something away. But now I'm like,
no,
well, where are the
it
king
was
and
way
queen?
in the past, because they've been in, Lorien for, so I think it was a long, long ago. I don't remember what happened to the previous. Do
the king and the queen live somewhere else?
No, I don't remember.
Man,
Yeah.
well, that just makes me love Galadriel even more. Like, I love her, and I would love for her to rule them all with the one ring. I think that's the most obvious solution to this problem that they've come across.
I love that she's wise enough to not.
I know. Gross. How dare she?
I know. It's another way where the elves are just better than us humans. I mean,
I know.
Boromir's over there like eyeing the ring. He would love to take it.
Oh,
but Galadriel
Boromir.
is like, Galadriel's like, I would try and do good with it, and it wouldn't work out. So
yeah,
sorry.
she says like, well, I mean, it would start off with me defeating evil and everything, but it would go downhill pretty fast from there. So let's not go down that path.
And I think the elves are wise enough to. I think sometimes we see the elves as keeping themselves apart from humans and because they think they're better than us. But I think they also understand, and this is just my own personal opinion, I think they also understand that humans would not take kindly to elvish rulers. Like, if they were to be like, hey, we're clearly better, let us help you out, we'll just rule over you and make everything great, we'd be like, no thanks.
Yeah. I also think they really and it's because they've lived for so long, like they've seen everything, they've experienced everything, and they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing, basically. And if they have the wisdom to be like, that's dangerous, we're not going to touch that. Or, they're great, okay? Come at me.
I'm on the same page.
Oh man.
This episode's gonna be an elvish love fest.
It's a very elf heavy episode, and I'm not sorry. So anyway, so yeah, the chapter.
I was so excited when you asked me to do Farewell Lothlorien because I was like, oh, that's gotta be Galadriel, and I love this. So
oh my god, I love it so much. So we'll get to that in a second. Yes, so they all gather and they make a plan, and I like how Celeborn says, "For we are come now to the edge of doom," which just sounds very epic and final. Basically saying like, all right, it's time to make a game plan, kids. What you doing? And basically they don't know, which I think is hilarious. And it's such a mood that so Aragorn says, "We have not decided our course. Beyond Lothlorien, I do not know what Gandalf intended to do. Indeed, I do not think that even he had a..." God, I can't read. Indeed, I do not think that even he had any clear purpose. Like, that's just me, of having no idea what I'm doing, leading other people blind me along with me. That's pretty much, it's a great metaphor for this podcast, honestly.
I think for most humans in general, we're like, oh, I don't know what I'm supposed to do yet. And I love that before this, Celeborn the Wise says, now is the time when those who wish to continue the quest must harden their hearts to leave this land.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just sets the mood. Like, hey, I know you've been at peace here and it's been lovely and great, but you kind of got to go on. And they're all just like devastated to leave this wonderfully peaceful place. And it reminded me of Harry Potter when he dies and he's at like the train station when he's at, 9 3/4, and he's meeting with Dumbledore there. And he's like, he feels such peace, no more pressure to save the world. And it's like this difficult choice to return.
Yeah.
It would be so much easier to just take a train on than to return to the real world. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the Fellowship feels like that. Like they wish they could stay in this peaceful, evil-free place and not have to go off and save the world still. But they, like Harry Potter, have to make that choice to re-enter.
To continue on and end this thing that they've started.
Exactly.
And what's funny about that is Boromir basically is like, well, I mean, I'd like to go home, but we'd be heading in that direction anyway, so I guess I'll leave with everyone anyway. So, yeah, everyone's like, well, no, I'm not going to turn back and go home. And Boromir's like, well, my home is in that direction. So,
yeah, he's like, lucky me, Minas Tirith is on my way. So, he's like, I'm going to Minas Tirith. You guys can come if you want, but I'm heading home.
I'm still just waiting for up to this point, we've learned more. We've seen a lot more about Gandalf, obviously. Rip, rest in pieces. We've learned about Gimli just from the chapter when they're in Moria and they're learning about the dwarves and everything that happened there. Yes. And then also from seeing their relationship with the elves being healed. So we're learning about Gimli. We've learned about Legolas. Obviously, we know a lot about the hobbits already. We're kind of not really even slowly piecing together. We're getting glimpses into who Aragorn is, the mysterious son of a he is. And Boromir is still just a mystery to me. He is just always going to be that guy to me who said, maybe we should wear the ring in the Council of Elrond. So I'm just waiting for a moment. The one who has
the really bad idea. And you're like, oh, when's he going to act on the bad idea? Hopefully he's smart enough not to act on the bad idea.
Yeah, I'm just like waiting for a point where I'm like, okay, this makes sense now. And I understand more about Boromir's character. At this point in the book, by page 379 in my copy, I still know nothing about Boromir, except that to me, he's just kind of the worst.
He's one of those characters that I feel like you learn more about him after you learn his backstory, which doesn't really happen until like you meet his dad. And then you're kind of like, oh, okay.
It's like, okay, I get it now. It all makes sense.
Yeah. You ever get it? You have like friends who are like, really loud or whatever. And then you like meet their parents. Like, oh, I see where you get it from.
Yeah. You're like, oh, it just all clicks. And you're like,
yes.
Oh, no wonder you turned out this way.
Exact.
So Celeborn, I love how the elves, they are constantly saying like, no, I will not give you advice and I will not counsel you. And then they proceed to like give them advice and counsel them. And that's what Celeborn does. And he's like, well, you could go, there are two ways you can go. You can go this way or you go that way. And while my advice is to not give you any advice, if I were you, I would go this way. And they're like, great, sounds like a plan. The elves agree to give them boats to travel down the great river, and they comment that Legolas, Boromir, and Aragorn are familiar with boats. And I just love this. It says, "And one hobbit," cried Mary. "Not all of us look on boats as wild horses. My people lived by the banks of the Brandywine." And this is just once again going into the vault of evidence for why Mary is the superior of the four hobbits, because he
definitely is more adventurous. Like
he's more adventurous. He seems to have, more skills, life skills than the other hobbits. Just pointing that out there. If you think Pippin's the best hobbit.
I love Pippin for the comedic relief. It's my favorite. But
I have to say though, since Gandalf died, I'm missing Gandalf almost exclusively because he's no longer here to make fun of Pippin. And those are my favorite parts.
Their relationship is pretty spectacular.
Gosh, I love it. I just always laugh when I think about when he throws the pebble in the well and Gandalf,
like, throw yourself in and you shall no longer be a nuisance. Like, oh my gosh. Harsh, Gandalf.
I'm going to like cross stitch that quote. And put it like on my imaginary Lord of the Rings section of my bookshelf that I don't have yet because I don't have enough room on my bookshelf to have a section like that. But one
Lord
day.
Of the Rings, a shrine. Yes.
Yes.
Someday it'll be there.
So they leave Celeborn and Galadriel and they talk about what they're going to do. And it just says, for a long time they debated what they should do and how it would be best to attempt the fulfilling of their purpose with the ring. But they came to no decision. So I just like that they truly have no idea what's going on. And clearly, I don't know, it seems like Aragorn has some kind of internal conflict about taking over as the leader, and it seemed like there was some confusion about who was going to be the leader. And I'm
right.
Like,
they never
obviously
said second
Aragorn.
in command.
Yeah.
They're like, well, it was Gandalf, so
who next? But it just seems so obvious to me that like, yeah, it's Aragorn is the leader. And then as they're planning, Aragorn is just kind of like silently brooding, thinking about what he was going to do if Gandalf had still been there. And his plan...
So he has the sword at this point,
mm-hmm.
and he is ready to go to Minas Tirith. He's like, well, I thought I was going to go to Minas Tirith with Boromir. At this point, Minas Tirith has been without a king for 966 years. So it's kind of like just like Lion King, like it is time. Like it's like ready to like ascend to the throne. Like,
yeah,
they've been without a king for a long time. And I thought it was fascinating that the stewards who rule Gondor, they each time the new steward gets like appointed, they swear an oath. They're like, if the king returns, we will, give up the throne to them, like deliver the crown. But at this point, over 900 years later, like nobody expects it to happen. And so he's like, Aragorn's like ready to return. And, but then Gandalf dies and he's like, well, I can't abandon Frodo and the ring.
Yeah.
Like I can't leave this little hobbit just to walk into Mordor all alone.
I know. Yeah. His plans came to a screeching halt. And he's like, well, I guess that's not going to happen anymore. So my question is, so could he not return as king until he got the sword repaired?
I believe that's part of it. Like to prove that he is an heir of Isildur, like he has to have the sword repaired.
Okay. Because I also had an issue it was either chapter 2 or 3 of book 2 or part 2 or whatever the second half of Fellowship of the Ring, this nonsense organization. And I know it was all supposed to be published as one book, and I get it. But what was I saying? Oh, so my issue is that like they set up the sword or the two pieces of the broken blade as being this like prophecy fulfilling thing that the blade would be restored and the king shall be returned to his rightful place. And then like the next page, basically, the elves fix the sword. So I don't know if I missed something, if there has to be more to it, if there's like a part 2 of fixing the sword that I'm not getting. I don't know. I'm just not impressed right now.
I'm not sure why it hasn't been done before this point. I'm not sure on that. Like, why is Aragorn and the sword just both happen to be ready at this point in time?
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like the movies make Aragorn and the sword, it's more of a dramatic thing than in the book. Like, they play it up.
Yeah. And I don't know. I felt like it was supposed to be a much more dramatic note in the book, too, of we've been waiting so many years. And then meanwhile, Aragorn is just wandering in the woods with the sword because he's a ranger and he's getting, I don't know, foraging for food and hunting and looking out for hobbits. And then meanwhile, they're like, do we have a king? Where's our king? I guess he's not going to come ever. So I don't know.
Right. And at this point, the people, if I remember right, so the people of Gondor assume that there are no heirs of Isildur left, and Aragorn kind of has to prove that to them. Meanwhile, Gandalf has done deep digging into the like ancestry, the genealogy of Isildur, and he's like, hey, I think I found the heir of Isildur. So I think Aragorn knew it, but he didn't really widely advertise the fact. I don't know if maybe he wasn't ready.
I wouldn't either if I was him.
Right?
Don't want people coming after you. Okay, I see. It's been quite a... Listeners, this is a fine example of real life character development where I finally learned how to read the maps in my book. So, in like the earlier episodes, I'm like, I don't know where we are. The map in my book makes no sense. Help me, please. And now I know what's happening.
Also, for the longest time, I always thought that they were traveling north. I don't know why. I just like assumed that they were traveling north. But yeah, they're traveling south this whole time.
Yeah,
The Shire is in the north and Mordor is in the south. Like I always had that flip for years and years.
Yes, they're heading, and then moving forward, they will be heading south. Yes, they will be heading south down the Great River toward... Actually, there's like an entire paragraph. I think it's towards the end of the chapter. There's an entire paragraph where Celeborn almost just word for word verbally describes what the map looks like. And it's clearly an example of Tolkien being like showing off how much attention to see, look, I made a map. Don't you want to look at my map? Isn't it great? I made this entire land and I named everything. You see that tree over there? I named that. You see that rock over there? I named that too.
There are so many details in this book. It's insane. But I love that in his letters, he mentions there's this lady who like wrote him a letter. She's like, hey, I'm having a book club or something of the sort. I don't remember exactly. She's like, I'm having a group of, Lord of the Rings fans and I've got all these questions. So she writes him a dozen questions so that he'll answer. And I love that he says, hey, I've got a minute. I'll answer your questions briefly. He says, I do not know all the answers. Much of my own book puzzles me. And in any case, much of it was written so long ago, anything up to 20 years, that I now read it as if it were from a strange hand. So I love that he put all this time and effort into it. And then he's like,
even Tolkien
there's still a lot of it that's a mystery. Yeah.
Man.
He's like,
and
it's too much.
I feel like the majority of that mystery was Tom Bombadil. Man, he had to have just written Tom Bombadil while he was in the middle of like, I don't know, tripping on acid or something. And then he came out of his
if he were the type, yeah.
He came out of his trip and he's like, whoa, what a character I created. I hope no one ever asks me about that because I remember nothing about my thought process during that writing session.
That's so funny because I was doing all this research for things because you read the book and this is hard for you because you don't want to do the research and get spoilers.
Yeah.
But I read something and I'm like, but what does that even mean? And so then I like look it up and then I fall into these holes of research and I just love research. But anyways, it's funny that you mentioned Tom Bombadil because another one of his letters, his aunt wrote to him and his aunt was like, well, I'd really love if you wrote a small story about Bombadil. Like, I'd love to hear more of it. And he's basically like, no, I wrote everything I need to write about him.
He's like, Tom Bombadil's had enough.
He's
he's
what
happy
he
to
is.
live in the... He basically gave the same answer that Gandalf gave in the Council of Elrond chapter when everyone is like, so what about this Tom Bombadil character? Can't we get him on this action? And Gandalf is like, no, he's not going to be bothered by this. He'll just want to stay in the forest. So...
I love that when they're trying to decide which side of the river to take, they're going to go down the river. There's like Boromir and Aragorn are deciding, but I love that like the hobbits Frodo's kind of, thinking it through too. But I love that the other hobbits are like asleep. Like they're like, other people decide this for us.
I think I had, the whole gang is in their little like fellowship treehouse Airbnb, and they're talking, trying to make plans of some kind and figure out what to do. Yeah. And then it mentions at the end, it says, let's see, Frodo looked at Aragorn, but he seemed deep in his own thought and made no sign that he had heeded Boromir's words. And so their debate ended. Merry and Pippin were already asleep and Sam was nodding. The night was growing old. So so the hobbits are like, I mean, clearly we are not the brains of this operation, so we're gonna go to sleep. Y'all have fun figuring that out.
Let other people figure it
out. Just point in, tomorrow morning, just point in a direction and we'll go there.
I feel like we should mention Boromir's words.
Yes.
Where he's talking about, he's like, if you wish only to destroy the ring, he said, then there is little use in war and weapons, and the men of Minas Tirith cannot help. But if you wish to destroy the armed might of the Dark Lord, then it is folly to go without force into his domain, and folly to throw away. And then he like pauses suddenly, and he's like, it would be folly to throw away lives, I mean. And Frodo's like, wait, I don't think that's what you're going to say. It would be folly to throw away what? Like the Ring of Power?
Yeah. And and Boromir also brought up kind of this similar idea too in the Council of Elrond about, he used the word folly, and he said this is, going to lead straight to, I don't even know how to properly use the word. I know what folly means, but I don't, like it's such an old word. I don't even know how to like properly use it in a sentence.
It'd be a great mistake.
Yeah,
like,
basically,
give it up.
Yeah, basically it says like, this is a bad idea. We're all gonna die. Are you dumb or, Forrest, like the Forrest Gump quote, are you dumb or just plain stupid? Like that's what Boromir's mood is almost of.
Right.
We're all gonna die. This is awful. This isn't gonna go well.
Yeah, he's like, we have the ring. Just men alone are not going to defeat, Sauron. And so why not use the ring for our own purposes?
Yeah, and he it's almost like he came up with the idea he was like thinking out loud, like, well, I mean, if you want to defeat Sauron, then you will need an army, and then the men of Minas Tirith will come in handy, so you should definitely do that. And then he kind of like, as he was saying it, he realized what he was saying, and he's like, wait a minute, I don't want you to do that, because then a bunch of people are going to die, and that's just a waste of lives. Let's not do that.
Right.
So I don't know, I just love that like they constantly are ending, Tolkien will break up these sections, and the first two sections of this chapter are broken up. Like when they end, it's with the group still not really knowing what to do. The only thing that they are doing is based off of the semblance of a vague plan that the elves gave, that Celeborn and Galadriel gave them, of go down the Great River, and then once you get to Minas Tirith, you'll have to make a decision about whether or not Boromir is going to hop out and be like, see ya, so is Boromir from Minas Tirith? Is like that so that's his home, and he just wants to go home? I don't know.
Do they not mention it in the I thought maybe when they mention it in the council that he's the son of the steward of Gondor.
Oh, that he very well could have mentioned that in that chapter, but so much happens in that chapter, I probably...
and it would be like Tolkien to make it a throwaway line, that it's like, son of the son of the steward of Gondor.
Yeah,
what
Aragorn,
does that even
son of
mean?
Arathorn. Yeah, Boromir, son of... What did you say?
Oh, I can't even remember his...
Son of the ruler of Gondor. Sure, let's go with that. Anyway.
Yeah, the steward. Yeah.
Steward, yeah, that's it. So they wake up in the morning and... Sorry, I legitimately had to stop myself from saying they wake up in the morning feeling like P. Diddy. Anyway, so they wake up and the elves give them for their journey because they're leaving. They give them this just sounds very delicious elf food called cram. Or no, the dwarves call it cram.
Lembas bread.
Yeah.
The dwarves have something similar.
Yeah, the elves.
Well, except not really similar according to Gimli. He's like, wait a minute, this is
is way better. And it like sounds delicious. I'm like, I don't know what lembas is, but I want it in my stomach right now. It sounds so good.
I know. We need to talk about what amazing hosts the elves are.
Yes.
And how when these people are leaving, that they don't even really know them, but they're like, hey, let us give you like ultimate party favors to just take on your way.
Yeah. And so the lembas, it says the food was mostly in the form of very thin cakes made of a meal that was baked in a light brown on the outside, and inside was the color of cream. And they say that this food, it will basically, like, if they eat it, it'll hold them over for like the rest of the day because it's such a good
fill a grown man for the day.
Yeah. And it also has to have some kind of like magical component to it as well, because the earlier in the start of the book, when Pippin, Frodo, and Sam run into the random group of traveling elves, they give them some of their drink, and it's some magical elf liquid that we don't know what it is. It's just some unnamed like golden liquid that makes them immediately feel fortified and strong and like they can continue going on. So clearly like elf.
Well, I like the idea that when it goes back to that the elves' magic is actually art. Like, even down to the way that they bake their food is just an art form and so much superior to anything that we can make. And Gimli's like, oh, this is like cram, except then he eats it and he's like, well, this is way better than the best cakes that the dwarves have ever made. So not like cram.
Yeah, it's like
it's definitely elvish.
It's like when your grandma says the secret ingredient to her cookies is love.
Love.
Like, it's like, no, but Gimli's like, so tell me this, like, what's in this? What's the secret ingredient? And they're like, love. No, really, love. We learned how to bottle love. And this contains approximately 3 teaspoons of essence of love. And then you bake it at 350 and then you let it cool. And then you stick it back in the oven for another 5 minutes just to let it crisp on the top. Oh, delicious.
So Tolkien talks about lembas bread and he says, well, he was in one of his letters. I just read so many of his letters preparing for this episode because I love them so much. But he talks about, I guess there was a movie in the works of Lord of the Rings back in like the 50s. And so he was like reading through the script and there's this letter that has bullet pointed numbered problems that he has with the script. Like everything
I'm
that he
sure
did not
it's
like.
many problems.
It is, and it's so funny. But he's talking about lembas bread, and he says that in the script, they call it food concentrate. And he's like, I really don't like when people try and put my stories toward French fairy tales, but I also really don't like when people try and, what does he call it? I dislike equally any pull towards scientification, of which this expression is an example. He says, we are not exploring the moon or any other more improbable region. No analysis in any laboratory would discover chemical properties of lembas that make it superior to other cakes of wheatmeal. So he's like, guys, it's not a science here. It's not some weird food concentrate. It's just elf magic.
It's magic.
Wonderful bread.
You can't...
It's the art of the elves.
Yeah, you can't quantify magic. I would love to see a Great British Bake Off elf version.
Elf
season.
With all the Lord of the Rings food.
It would be so... Oh, man.
They could do like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. They could just do like magical foods in general. And like who can make it best.
Man, elf magic. It's the greatest.
No.
So then they also give them these cloaks, which I want one too. It says
Absolutely.
It was hard to say of what color they were. Gray with the hue of twilight under the trees they seemed to be. And yet if they were moved or set in another light, they were green as shadowed leaves or brown as fallow fields by night, dusk silver as water under the stars. So like magical cloaks, I'm here for it.
That's my favorite, is that Pippin's like, are these magic cloaks? And the leader of the elves is like, I don't know what you mean by that.
Yeah, I do not know what you mean by that. They are fair garments and the web is good, for it was made in this land. They are elvish robes, certainly, if that's what you mean. So basically he's saying like, no, like magic robes, I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, like, were they made by us elves in our magical tree forest land? Yes, they were. If that's what you mean by magical, then I suppose they are magical cloaks.
He's like, they're not magic, but they camouflage and they weigh very little, but they'll keep you warm or cool as needed. Oh, and they were made by Lady Galadriel and her maidens. Like, another reason why she's so cool, because she's like the leader of the land, but she's sitting there weaving cloaks in her spare time.
I know.
Which I feel total kindred spirit with her there, because I love to sew. And so I'm like, look at that, Galadriel's making clothes too.
Yeah, this will have to be your next project, a camouflage elf cloak. Man,
the only way I could even make that work is if I made it like double-sided, and then you could stand in two very specific locations where it would camouflage.
Yeah, you have to like line it up perfectly to match like the wall in your living room and then like a random brick wall outside somewhere. And that's it. It's like you can only like you can only hide in these two places, but if you're in those two places, you're very well hidden. So oh man. So they start heading down to, I guess, the riverfront where the boathouse, I suppose, where all of the boats are. And it's at this point that I'm like, I really hope Galadriel just ends up running after them and is like, wait for me, I'm coming. Because she would be an excellent addition to the Fellowship. I know that's not going to happen, but
they're like dying for a new leader. Nobody really wants to take on the role.
Yeah, Aragorn doesn't want to do it. Like Aragorn is such a reluctant leader at this point. He's like earlier he's literally like, I mean, I guess I'll be the leader, because I cannot for the life of me imagine what it would, I can't picture the look on Frodo's face if I told him, hey, okay, have fun in Mordor, bye, I'm gonna stay here. So
meanwhile, Boromir would absolutely love to be leader.
I don't know.
But nobody wants him.
Yeah, I feel like he would be he's all for being the leader, and then the second they get to Minas Tirith, he's like, "Okay, bye. I'm done being a leader now."
That's the point, is he wants to lead them right to Minas Tirith. Yeah. He's like, "Look, we can make good use of the ring in Minas Tirith, trying to beat back, Sauron from here."
Yeah. Boromir's a man with a plan. It's not a great plan, but he has one. So, which is more than I can say for Aragorn at this point. Right. So they get down and they meet, they see all the boats that they're going to be taking, and they also, I don't know why this made me laugh, they see these ropes that the elves have made / ropes that the elves use, and I just like that there's a nice callback to rope, because when they were packing to leave Rivendell, that's the one thing that Sam was like, oh man, I forgot rope, and I know that now that I've forgotten rope, that's going to be the one thing that I wish I had with me, and blah 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 blah. And so I like that they arrive and they see this rope, and Sam is immediately fascinated with it. He just really likes some good rope.
He like geeks out over the rope. And he's like, man, what is it made out of?
Yeah. And
they're like, you always need a rope. And he's like, you don't need to tell me that.
Yeah.
I came without any, and I've been worried ever since.
I know, yeah.
And so the elf mentions that it's made with hithlane, which I looked up. I don't know what that is. And it's a strong fiber from the inner bark of the Malorn trees, which they have there in Lore.
Yeah.
And it's a silvery color, like the cloaks. And so I looked it up, and some people hypothesize that the cloaks are also made from the same fiber of the Malorn tree.
I can see that.
But there's not like evident, or like Tolkien never said one way or the other.
No, that makes complete sense to me. Yeah, I just assumed that, I just assumed that hithlane was kind of like, whatever's the name of the really, really special silver that's in Moria, how it's a very valuable thing that's specific. Yeah, that's it. That's specific to that area and that group of people. I was like, I'm sure that Tolkien has created this valuable resource for a reason. We'll find out, I guess. I don't know. I think, I think it's funny that they the elves are like, they kind of go into a little bit of they like talk a little bit about the history of the rope, and then they're like, but we don't have time to show you how to make it now, but we do have time to explain to you just how unique and special this rope is. So I don't know, it's kind of like the joke from the Airplane movie of like, a man is dying on this airplane, we need to get to a hospital. A hospital? What is it? It's a big building with lots of doctors where people go to get well, but that's not important right now. It kind of feels like this. It's like, rope, what is this? It's made of Hithlane,
no time for
but that's not important right now. So,
and then they get the boat, which are light built and unable to sink. So, you know, there's another amazing party favor. You got the lembas bread, the cloaks, the rope, the boat.
Yeah, it's a lit party bag. Like when you're leaving the birthday party when you're 8 years old, and then you get home and you go through the goodie bag and you're like, oh,
I want to know
nice.
why goodie bags aren't a thing at like adult birthday parties. At what point did we get too cool for that? I want a party bag.
I think I don't know. I'm trying to think of like, what would I want in a goodie bag if I left my friend's birthday party? And I think I would just want things that like my friend wouldn't be able to afford, you know?
Maybe that's it. Our tastes got too expensive.
Yeah.
To be thrilled by like cheap little trinkets and gold coin chocolates and etc. from party bags.
Yeah. Although
now, if we could all give gifts like the elves.
Truth. So they talk about the boats, and they're very special boats. I don't know. They make the note and it says, but they are wayward if mishandled. It's like, yes, any boat is wayward if mishandled. Thanks for the update, elves. No duh.
I kind of feel like it was almost a slight toward
a little dig, yeah.
All the non-elves. They're like, well, just make sure you can handle these elvish boats.
Yeah.
Like, can you handle it?
And I don't know why, but I kind of laughed at the boat arrangements. I mean, it makes complete sense. It says, Aragorn, Frodo, and Sam were in one boat. Boromir, Merry, and Pippin in another. And in the third were Legolas and Gimli, who had now become fast friends. I love that they're BFFs now.
I know.
And they have such a heartfelt conversation at the end of the chapter too. And I'm just like, yeah, that's how you show that the beef between your people is over now. That's how you show it, is by having the elf character and the dwarf character be BFFs almost immediately. But I just kind of laughed at the boat that in one boat there's Boromir, Merry, and Pippin, and that just seems like that one group on the school field trip that the teacher's like, that group is the one I gotta keep my eye on, because they're gonna go wandering off, and they're gonna like
start splashing canoe fights.
Yeah.
And, just
yeah. Would not want to be in that boat, that's for sure. They start like rowing off, and it's so when they were given the cloaks and then they walk away to see the boats, I was like, okay, this is it. They're leaving Lorien. That's so sad that we didn't get a more official goodbye from Galadriel. Oh well, whatever. And then they get in the boats, and then they hear Galadriel, and I was like, oh, okay, so it's not goodbye right now. And they kind of rowed the boats over to a different part of Lorien, I think. And Galadriel's song that she's singing is a very traditional, like, blessing, like, farewell that the elves, or that she's singing on behalf of the elves. And it doesn't, like, I'm sure it sounded pretty, but the message, I don't know, it just seemed, so some of the lyrics, the lines say, "O Lorien, the winter comes, the bare and leafless day, the leaves are falling in the stream, the river flows away." And then the last two lines say, "But if of ships I now should sing, what ship would come to me, what ship would bear me ever back across so wide a sea?" And it just sounds like maybe you could have sung a song with a little bit more hopeful message. That just seems very
a sad
ominous
song
and
of
sad.
parting.
Yeah.
Also, I love that she's singing this from her boat that is shaped like a swan.
Oh yeah, I missed that part.
Like,
yeah.
Okay, so Celeborn and Galadriel are just like floating down the river in this giant swan boat. That
so
is just,
dramatic.
like, I mean, couple goals. They're like,
it's honestly
this amazing boat.
Yeah, so as they're going down the river, they make a note that like, oh wow, look at that big swan over there. Oh wait, that's a boat with Celeborn and Galadriel in it. And then now that you said that, I am imagining a like stereotypical cliche boat from like a Tunnel of Love ride.
Love, yeah. That's what I was thinking too. I was like, what came first? Somebody was like a Lord of the Rings fan. Whoever first made the Tunnel of Love ride. And
yeah, with
like,
the swan.
Gotta be swans. You know, we just gotta ride in swans so that we can be like Celeborn lad.
So dramatic. So they all stop for their official, kind of the official ending feast farewell party. And
right, it's a big parting feast picnic.
Yeah.
That's also a surprise. Like they thought they were on their way and they're like, oh wait, we don't have to quite leave Lorien left.
We get to eat more food.
Fantastic.
I'm here for that.
Too. More elvish food.
Yeah. Oh, also real quick, I want to read this part. It describes, this is talking about Galadriel as she's singing and they're watching her from the boat. It says, she seemed no longer perilous or terrible, nor filled with hidden power. Already she seemed to him, as by men of later days, elves still at the time are seen, present and yet remote, a living vision of that which has already been left far behind by the flowing streams of time. Man, what a magical, beautiful person Galadriel is. So then this is where is the paragraph that I was talking about, where Celeborn literally gives just like step-by-step instructions and names every single thing that they're going to pass by going down the Great River. Let me see if I can count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. He name drops 14 places or rivers or mountains, whatever, within this one paragraph.
I know. And that's one of the things I was talking about. Like, it's so much more fun reading this for a second time because you're like, oh, I know at least what half of those refer to. There's still some that I'm like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, exactly.
If I don't know where that comes into play. But about half of them, you're like, you'll hear those names again later.
I also stopped and giggled for about 5 minutes because one of the name drops is over the cataracts of Rauris into the Nindolf, the Wet Wang, as it is called in your tongue. And I giggled like a 5th grader for a long time at the name Wet Wang. Like I'm doing now. Like Tolkien has so many like great cool names for places. And then he has this one called Wet Wang.
Yeah. You're like, oh, okay. Like, I mean, Dead Marshes, that's a perfectly ominous name. But the Wet Wang is just funny.
Wet Wang. Oh man. So then is the kind of official goodbye, which is at this point I'm like, there have been a lot of false goodbyes. Oh, it's because yeah. So Celeborn gives a formal kind of closing speech goodbye, and I'm like, okay, this is it. This is when they're leaving, right? And then it goes into Galadriel giving her gifts. I'm like, good lord, they've said goodbye like 20 times in this chapter, and it's a short chapter too. And so we get to Galadriel's giving of the gifts, which sounds like a Christmas special about giving homeless children toys during the holiday season, but
you know, her gifts remind me of Lion the Witch and the Wardrobe, where Santa comes and he has like the perfect gift for each person. Yeah, this is what it totally reminds me of.
Yes.
Which, I mean, we know Lewis and Tolkien were friends, but who had the idea first?
I know. That's what I wonder about all the time, because Tolkien mentions, like, the trees were getting up and walking, and I know... So I'm only going off of my knowledge of the movie, but I know that happens in the Prince Caspian movie. The trees like get up and start moving. So like, yeah, who did it first? Tolkien or Lewis? And then also in a previous, again, I don't know if it's in the Narnia books. I know it's in the movie, but in a chapter not too long ago, Frodo goes like for the Shire. And all I could think of is for Narnia.
For Narnia, yes.
So I wonder if
and
they
I think
would,
a lot of it comes based off of mythology. Like they kind of draw similar ideas.
Yeah.
Like the idea of wood nymphs has been around since, Greek and Roman mythology.
Yeah.
So in that case, I think they pulled from those for Narnia. And Tolkien's trees are called Ent, which are my favorite character in the entire, the whole, trilogy. And so when you get to the Ent chapters, I would love to come back and talk about the Ents.
I'll put you down on the schedule.
Yes. I'm dibsing it now if I can.
Yes, please call dibs. Yeah, I wonder if they just would trade off and be like, hey, I really like that idea you used about the trees. Do you mind if I use it? Yeah, but only if I can use your for Narnia thing. And can I do that? Yeah, go for it. So
we're sharing.
So Galadriel gives Aragorn a beautifully crafted sheath for the sword, and then Aragorn kind of gives not a sassy answer, but it's a very nice gift, and he doesn't exactly say thank you. He says, "Lady, you know all my desire, and long held in keeping the only treasure that I seek. Yet it is not yours to give me, even if you would, and only through darkness shall I come to it." So this is where I get confused, because up until now, my prediction is that Aragorn is in love with Galadriel, like Beren and Luthien, and they can't be together for obvious reasons. And actually, it's later. So after he says that, she gives him this green gem kind of brooch thing, and let's see,
right, with the stone of Elisar.
Yes, and it was given to her daughter, and then her daughter gave it to her daughter, which is Galadriel's granddaughter. Yes. And if I understood it correctly, Arwen is Galadriel's granddaughter. And so kind of this piece of information, and then also what Aragorn says, I'm like, okay, well, now I'm confused, because he says, "You know all my desire, and long held in keeping the only treasure I seek, yet it is not yours to give me, even if you would." So now I'm like, okay, maybe he's not in love with, maybe it is Arwen after all, because originally that was what I predicted in the first place, was that he loves Arwen and they can't be together for some reason. And now I'm like, ooh, well, maybe it makes sense that Galadriel is saying, "You can't be with my granddaughter because you are a mortal man, and she is a beautiful elf woman who don't need no mortal man, and she doesn't approve, and that's why Aragorn can't be with Arwen." I don't know. I'm just confusing myself with my dumb, bold claims.
There's so much here, and when Galadriel gives him the Elisar, she says, "It was left in my care to be given to you." So the Elisar is not actually from her, it's from someone else.
Okay, see, that's how, thank you for pointing that out, because I was confused. I was like, well, wait a minute. If she gave it to her daughter and then her daughter gave it to Arwen, how did it get back to Galadriel to give away? Yeah. So I guess, okay, I'm sticking with this theory that Arwen and Aragorn are
think it through a little bit, because we know that Arwen would have been the last one in possession of it, and Galadriel says it was left in my care to be given to you.
Okay.
So
I see what you're doing, Tolkien, but not really. I also had a very terrifying...
don't get too...
Oh, no, sorry, go ahead.
Don't get too hopeful about hearing any more of his love story.
Until I'm sure it won't happen.
Very end.
Yeah. Well, what was I say? Oh, I also have another terrifying prediction to make. So while I'm recording an episode or something, I'm not always, I don't always exactly remember what I'm saying, or I don't always process it, or I don't always remember or fully take in what my guest has said. So while I'm editing it, it's a lot more time for me to think over what just happened and what the conversation was like. And I was editing an episode recently where I said, I'm talking about this prediction I have where Aragorn is in love with some, at this point, mysterious elf woman. I'm assuming I don't know, either Galadriel or Arwen. I guess Arwen at this point is what I'm going with, because he told the story of Beren and Luthien, and I'm saying, and in the episode I was saying like, yeah, he told the story where the mortal man fell in love with the elf woman, and then the mortal man died, and then the elf woman gave up her immortality to die with him. And as I was listening to myself say this, I was like, oh no, Aragorn's gonna die, and then some elf woman is gonna give up her immortality to die with him. And God, I hope that doesn't happen. And that's my sad, terrifying, bold claim is that Aragorn will be like Beren, and some unnamed elf woman, presumably Arwen, will be like Luthien. We shall see.
We shall see. I do want to mention that I know I'm not going to talk about that.
Okay.
But I will mention that so Elisar is the name of the stone, but it was also predicted or foretold that Aragorn would be called King Elisar.
Ooh,
so
cool.
There's like a connection between his necklace and a future possible king title.
Ooh, cool. Sometimes, okay, Tolkien, sometimes your attention to detail is cool. I get it.
It comes back around.
Yeah. So then this made me laugh a lot. Galadriel gives Boromir, Merry, and Pippin belts.
Okay, I loved that too. I was like hey, I don't have a priceless stone to give you. So the Elisar holds the light of the sun. Like, it's a priceless, like, it's the most like celebrated thing that like these elvish people have, and she's giving it to him. And so it's like, yeah, you get this, Aragorn, but I've just got some, gold and silver belts for Boromir and Merry and Pippin.
The boat number 2 crew. And
exactly.
And like literally everyone else gets, like Frodo, Aragorn, Gimli, like they all get these beautiful meaningful gifts, and they're given with much fanfare and beautiful explanations and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then literally within the span of 2 sentences, it says, the lady bowed her head, then she turned to Boromir, and to him she gave a belt of gold, and to Merry and Pippin she gave small silver belts, each with a clasp wrought like a golden flower. And that's it.
Yeah,
it's not even
one sentence.
It's not even 2. Yeah, it's one sentence that uses a semicolon. So
yes,
man, poor boat number 2 crew. So very predictably, Legolas gets quiver of arrows and a new bow. Is that what he gets? Let's see.
Yes.
A new bow. Or
I love
does
that
she
it says
just
it's
get a bow?
strung with elf hair.
Yeah.
Like, whose elf hair? Is it Galadriel's elf hair?
Ooh, so then...
Is that like a little BFF moment for Gimli and Legolas? Like, they each have some elf hair gifts there?
So they ask Gimli, dwarf, what shall you want? And Gimli, being a very nice, humble dwarf, says, it's just enough for the elves to have welcomed me here and, not killed me. So I don't need a gift. Thanks very much. And Galadriel basically forces him to say what he wants. And like such a creepy...
It's like truth and dare.
Like,
what do you really want? Tell me the truth.
He just sounds like such a creeper, and he asks for a string of her hair. And I know it's supposed to be like, her hair is beautiful, obviously.
Right. And he has fallen so much in love with her. Awe of her.
Yeah.
No, I love that it says that. Well, yes. And I love that it says that Celeborn gazed at the dwarf in wonder, and he's like, man, this dwarf keeps like hitting on my wife. Like, what is he doing?
Yeah, and everyone in the crowd is shocked and they're kind of not disgusted, but they're like, oh, I would never. And
like, what a weird request.
Galadriel's like, no. I asked him what he wanted, and he said he wanted my hair. I'm sure he has a very good reason for it. And I don't know, just like, this is how a lot of like characters in movies who are stalkers start off as, like I have a bag of your hair in the back of my closet. Like, and I don't know, I know it was a different time, and I know her hair is magical, but
I think of it more of in past generations where it was like a a token of love to give a lock of hair to somebody, you know, like they'd carry it and treasure it.
I think that's so creepy. And you might have a different perspective because you have children, but my mom has like a lock of my hair from like my first haircut. And I remember it's
I'm not sentimental, so I never did that.
Okay, because I think it's so creepy. It's like a little, it's in like a little pot, like silver, like it looks like a jewelry thing. And so like I remember sometimes I would go into her room and be looking for something, and I would lift up the like cover on this bowl, and like there would be hair, and I'm like, why do you have hair in here? That's disgusting. I'm like, why? Go put it in a baby book or something.
You know, I'd rather the hair than the people who keep their kids' teeth that fall out. I think that's so much worse.
Oh, it's like, what are you gonna do? Make a new mouth with that? I don't know.
Okay, if you want, totally off topic. If you want nightmares, look up these dolls that people make using teeth from their kids.
Oh no!
It is the most disgusting thing. Oh, terrifying.
Every inch of my body just cringed. Oh god,
they're so gross.
Oh, that's so gross.
I don't know why anyone would.
Oh, that's nasty. Okay, so back to Galadriel's beautiful gifts.
I love that on a happier note, on a less creepy note, I love that when she says that she gives Gimli the hairs, and he says that, you know, she says that if should hope not fail, she's like, I'll give you this kind of like promise to go along with it. She says that your hands shall flow with gold, and yet over you gold shall have no dominion, like having no power over you. You know, so like you'll be wealthy, but you won't be one of those terrible people who hoards their wealth.
Yeah, you won't be greedy about it. Yeah,
exactly. and becomes a terror because of it. And I love that. It's like, I mean, you know how when you think about you get 3 wishes or whatever, and from a genie, and everyone's like, well, I want endless money. Like, remind me to ask for this exact statement here.
It's like, I want to be rich. I want to be rich, but I don't want to let my money ruin me as a person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like the Midas.
Exactly.
Midas touch.
Yeah. Let's see. So we did Gimli, Legolas, Sam.
Oh, we got to go back and talk about Sam.
Yeah.
Because I love his gift so much.
Yeah, Sam it's a box with soil from the forest in it, and it's for should they ever return or be able to settle down again, and he has a garden again, he can sprinkle this soil and it'll make everything that grows in it beautiful and wonderful. And it's like such a just nice, thoughtful gift. And it's so simple too.
Yeah. So the box and it's so tailored to Sam. The box that it's in is a box of gray wood. So perhaps another, you know, Malorn tree gift. And he gets this like dirt. But, you know, we know that his dad's a gardener. So and we know how much he loves the Shire. And he like wants to go back to the Shire.
Yeah. And when she was doing her fierce gaze of knowledge at everyone in the previous chapter to like look into the depths of their soul and see whether or not they were legit and whether or not they were going to stay on this journey, the thing that Sam later says is, oh, I was imagining myself being back at home with my own little garden. So she has seen this dream and what Sam wishes he could be doing right now. So it's all very sentimental and special, but it's not a huge like magical or powerful gift. It's just, you know, it's a bringing it back to Pirates of the Caribbean. I've got a jar of dirt. And guess what's inside it?
I love that hers, like you said, it's a simple gift. It's like a promise of hope. She knows that he wants nothing more than to go back to the Shire. And with having just seen in the mirror of Galadriel that like the Shire destroyed. So like if that were to happen, this is his chance to not only return to the Shire, but to help rebuild the Shire. Yeah,
a gift of hope. Yeah, that's a great way of thinking of it too. It represents so much more than just being a box of dirt.
I mean, from her own personal orchard, so.
Yes. Oh yeah,
she's thinking fondly of Sam.
Yes.
Unlike Boromir's gift of a gold belt.
A gold belt. She's like,
dime a dozen.
She's like, I didn't really connect that well with Boromir, so let's give him a gold belt. It's like, well, what about Merry and Pippin? Silver belts. And then Frodo who is referred to, I can't remember if she did this in the last chapter or if it's happened before, but she refers to him as the ring bearer, which I think is funny. She gives him a crystal vial. It says, it glittered as she moved it, and rays of white light sprang from her hand. In this vial, she said, is caught the light of Arendel's star, set amid the waters of my fountain. It will shine still brighter when night is about you. May it be a light to you in dark places when all other lights go out. Remember Galadriel and her mirror. So up until that last part, I was like, oh, wow, what a nice like gift of hope. And then it says, remember Galadriel and her mirror. But the mirror gave these like awful, horrible visions. So it almost feels kind of like in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix when Dumbledore sends the Howler right before it's in the very beginning, and there were the Dementors and the Dursleys are about to kick Harry out, and he sends a Howler that says like, Petunia, remember my last. And it's very ominous and powerful. So I don't know, that's kind of conflicting messaging there for me, at least.
Well, and I think because part of it is, so she uses the starlight from Arendelle, she uses that in her mirror.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and that's where she's getting this little vial of liquid from. So yeah, I don't know if she's meaning like, remember what you saw in the mirror,
yeah,
or remember me, and she knows that the mirror is
me.
Exactly.
And when just starts crying immediately.
Yes, I know. And yeah, so and she's like, well, the mirror is something you'll definitely remember, because that was kind of a scary thing to happen. So remember me in my mirror, like, you know.
Yeah.
Just remember us.
And so after all the gifts have been given, she sings a song in an old Elvish language, and thankfully, we don't know what is said. So I was immediately like, yay, I can skip over this song. It's kind of roughly translated afterwards. And it's essentially just a song of farewell. And then they all get back in their boats and they sail away. Or I don't know, row away. And Gimli and Legolas have a little cry. They all kind of cry. And Gimli and Legolas just talk about how sad they are to be leaving. And Gimli in particular is very sad because obviously this was a huge deal that he even got to be there in the first place, and that the elves put aside their differences and decided to come together after like thousands of years. They finally put everything aside. And now they're off into the abyss.
I love the way that it says that, you know, they go around the bank of the river and the light of Lorien was hidden.
Yeah.
Which this whole idea of them on the river is they're like, hey, on the west side is us, where there's light and, you know, peace and good things. And you can travel down this side for a ways, but eventually you're going to have to cross over to the east side of the river, which is what leads you to, you know, to Mordor. And so it's like, you know, at some point you have to leave the light to finish this journey. And so just that idea that the light of Lorien is now hidden and that they have to move on the darkest part of their journey.
And I think it even says at some point that Frodo that was it. Like Frodo was never to return there again. So we know that like this is the last we'll see of Lorien. Yeah. And that makes me sad. So on that downer of an ending,
I do love that Gimli becomes a philosopher at the end. You know, he's like, I would not have come had I known the danger of light and joy.
Yeah.
Like it's so painful to him to leave this beautiful memory. And so I like that he and Legolas talk about it. And he's saying that, you know, Legolas is saying, you know, I count you blessed for having come here and getting to suffer this loss, because some people will never know it at all.
Mm-hmm. And Gimli's probably the first dwarf ever to know it. So that's a huge deal. So, wow. Well, Valerie, what would you like to share with our audience? Where can people find you on the internet?
Well, my husband and I co-host a podcast called Hello from Elsewhere, which is a lot of fun. We talk about all different kinds of themes in fiction, books and movies mostly, TV shows sometimes, you know, things like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, etc. All of our favorite, Star Wars, of course.
And speaking
if I didn't mention Star Wars, I'd probably be in trouble.
And speaking of Remember Me, you guys just literally just did an episode about Coco. I didn't watch the other movie. I haven't watched that other movie, but now it's on my list because I'm like, if it's similar in any way to Coco, it's got to be a good movie.
Yeah.
So
it's a beautiful movie. Yes. And so you can follow us on Instagram at elsewhere_pod. And if you're interested in, I have a personal sewing Instagram account called Wildfire Kisses, where I share all of my sewing things that are
so cool,
that are not like Galadriel's magic cloaks, but they're lots of fun.
It's so cool, and you're so talented and so cool. I wish I had any kind of level of skill like that. I like sew a button onto a jacket and I'm like, wow, I'm amazing. Look at what I did. So
that is amazing. Some people have to, go without a button forever.
I know. That's What I'm Talking About is a production of Bacon and Eggs. You can learn more about them by going to baconandeggs.media. The cover art is by Graphite, aka Vaishon Brandon. You can support him on Instagram at graphite.vmb. You can follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at TolkienAboutPod. You can find me on Twitter at MCWatt416 and Instagram at MCTurndownForWatt. And if you're listening and you like this, please rate and review. And if you're listening and you don't like this, then don't ever tell anyone ever again.
Keep it secret.
Yeah, keep it secret. Keep it safe. Cool. Well, I'm not scared. I'm feeling so many conflicted feelings because I only have 2 chapters left of Fellowship after this.
You are so close.
What the heck? And I know that something epic has to happen in the next chapter because chapter 10 is called The Breaking of the Fellowship. So what the heck
That's
happens?
a little something.
Oh, man. I'm nervous. I'm excited. And
I've been listening to your episodes, but I haven't been reading along until you asked me to. And so I was like, okay. But now at this point, I'm like, well, I have to keep reading because I'm at the climax of the book. I can't just stop here.
Oh my gosh. I'm
so good.
Just so many I'm in a glass case of emotions right now. Just I don't know how to handle things. Listeners, if you have any ideas or comments or anything about what I should do for the last chapter of Fellowship, send me a tweet or a reply or a comment or somewhere on social media because I want to do something fun for the last chapter. I just don't know what. So we'll see.
Some epic way to celebrate.
I know. I don't know what to do.
Bake some lembas bread.
Well, if either one of my producers, Tyler and Ethan, would catch up, I could have one of them on as a guest. But one of them just had to go and have a baby. And then the other one just had to go around the country and tour with bands and take really cool photography. So fine, I guess. You have valid excuses. Meanwhile, I'm just over here in my own little Lord of the Rings world.
You are like the Fellowship, just plodding along the trail, and they're like the elves off to the side, just doing their own thing.
Don't ever tell them that they're the elves. That gives them too much power.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about.